All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of your Hurt Business Podcast. My name's Ferris, and today my guest needs no introduction. If you know anything about MMA, you know about this guy. He's the head honcho of the New England Cartel, owner of Top Game Management, and the 2020 MMA Coach of the Year, Mr. Tyson Chartier. How we doing today, Coach?
What's up, Ferris? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, of course. How's the day? You guys get a crazy amount of snow today?
Not too bad. We got it's just dusting right now. I think it's gonna turn to rain. And then but yeah, other than that, we just got a good hard session in this afternoon with a few of the guys and what we do every day.
Yeah. Yeah, well, this is a special week. Little Lawson's birthday this week, the big five. Any
Yeah.
big plans for him this weekend?
So we had his birthday party last weekend, so we had like 15 of his little cousins or classmates come and at like a bouncy house place called Cowabunga. So we had his party last week. We just had a little family thing last night, and now it's back to business as usual. And yeah, just a house full of kids and chaos, but it's good.
I bet it's a fun chaos you guys got going on over there. Uh,
Yeah,
I'm sure you get this question all the time, but if one of your kids wanted to pursue MMA or combat in any shape or form, would you support?
yeah. I mean, whatever they want to do, I'll support. Like right now, all three of them are doing gymnastics. I got two boys and a little girl. They're all doing gymnastics, which I think is good. Um, and I think my oldest and my two boys played t-ball last year. I think they want to do that again this year. But if they wanted to get into like wrestling and then said they want to fight, like I'd support it, but I wouldn't push it on them. I'm not thinking just because I coach fighting that I want them to fight, and also just because I wrestled, in high school, I don't expect them to wrestle. So I kind of want them to kind of blaze their own path, and my role is to just be supportive of whatever it is they choose.
Yeah. Well, you also play football too. Maybe they take that route.
Yeah, I mean, I'd rather not play football. I got so
Yeah.
many concussions playing football, but I mean, my kids are going to be small, so I think like gymnastics, wrestling, stuff that doesn't involve, uh, big size. Obviously fighting can be part of that too. There's weight classes, so yeah, I think naturally they're going to gravitate towards the sports where size isn't as important, and obviously football, basketball, things like that are. So, but yeah, we'll see what they do. I just want them to have fun. I want them to be good sportsmanship and good teammates and try hard.
Hmm. That's beautiful, man. Those are three of the most important things of any athlete, right? Especially at a young age. You mentioned a second ago that you started with wrestling in high school, and then I noticed you were a BJJ black belt. How did that all come about, and what brought you on to wrestling?
So my older brother was 2 years ahead of me in high school. When I came in as a freshman, my high school, which was Manchester Memorial in Manchester, New Hampshire, got a wrestling program my freshman year. And we were fortunate that the coach that came in to start up the program was the old Plymouth College coach, and his son was in my class as a freshman. I played football with him. So we had a college coach. They had won New England's a couple times in a row in college, and he came in and started our program. So I was wrestling with a bunch of kids that had never wrestled before, but we had a college coach. So it was like we had great coaching, but with no training partners. We were all kind of learning as we went. But yeah, I just did it because my older brother signed up. Like, my older brother was like my hero growing up. I kind of just wanted to do everything he did. And so he was like, I'm going to wrestle. So I'm like, cool, I wrestle too. And that was, I think, freaking fall of '95. And so that was the first time I had ever wrestled, was my freshman year.
And then when did BJJ come about?
So I played football and wrestled in high school. And then in college, I wanted to stay local for college because I was a pussy and I had a girl that was still in high school. So I didn't want to go too far away. And so I went to Southern New Hampshire University. It was New Hampshire College at the time, and I was like, I'm just going to play lacrosse. And I never played before, so it's kind of a little bit delusional. But so I just bought like a stick at Home Depot and started like playing catch with myself in fields. I had no idea what I was doing. So I walked onto the team freshman year, and then by my senior year, my junior year I was starting on defense. Senior year I was captain, and coached lacrosse in college as I went to grad school. I was did the recruiting, and then after that, I was just so bored for like a year, and I'd watched a couple UFC cards. I was a big Tito Ortiz fan, and my girlfriend's mom at the time was like, "Oh, someone just told me they do jujitsu down at the library. Like it was in the library basement in Danvers, Mass." And so I was like, oh, I'll check it out. So I went down and took a class, and I took one class. And then a couple of days later, I flew out to Vegas for um, uh, 4th of July with my girlfriend. And on the way back, sat next to Dana White on the plane just by chance. And he was like, oh, you got to come out to a fight. I was like, oh, I'd love to. So he's like, we'll call Donna when we get off the plane. After my assistant, now she runs the USADA program. Like, call Donna and she'll give you tickets for. So I flew back up the next weekend and went and saw Arlovsky versus Tim Sylvia. And that was I think that was the main event that night. And it was Tito and Shamrock 3 or 2 or one of those. But anyway, it was like international fight week in Vegas, and I had to go out to a fight. And at that point, I was like, I'd done one jiu-jitsu class, and I'm like, I want to fight someday. I just want to make that walk, you know? And that's just what got me into it. And then I just kept with the jiu-jitsu, and I eventually got my black belt. But I'm not like, I would say this is like, I'm a black belt because I earned it, but I never competed. Like, I had neck surgery, all that stuff. I competed up through purple belt. But by the time but it was done MMA, I got neck surgery on my hand. So I never competed as a brown belt or a black belt. So I always joke and say I'm a fake black belt, but I'm just a time black belt. I can't. Some of these kids, man, they come up and they have a black belt. It's a different level, you know.
Yeah.
Like I don't even know half the moves they're teaching and the stuff that they can do. It's pretty amazing. So, but yeah, I mean that was something I was pretty proud of, like getting my black belt. Um, because it's hard. There's not a lot of martial arts that take 8, 12 years to get your black belt. And it's most of the people I started with they don't have their black belts. They phased out, and so it's something I am proud of. But it's cool to think like the journey, like every step getting the belts and how it all happened. It was very serendipitous. A lot of random things that happened that pulled me into it, and yeah, that is something I'm proud of.
Yeah, I mean, not many people can say they're black belts.
Yeah, like me and my wife always joke. She's always like, I feel so safe when I'm out with you, and I'm like, I think I got like PTSD because like I'm always in a room with like UFC fighters and like
Yeah.
younger coaches that are like in the thick of it. So I'm the guy that's going to get his ass whipped if a fight breaks out. Like, but in real world, I'm the guy that would win if a fight broke out. So I feel like I'm just like, yeah, if I'm at church, I'm pretty confident I could probably beat up everybody there. But if I'm in the training room, I'm going to be the first one to tap out. So
Right. It all depends on the environment, right? Where you are and who's around you. Because boy,
exactly.
are there some killers on the team. That's a good transition. Let's get into the team a little bit. Most recently, Nick Fiore. Great showing. His first time under the big lights in the UFC. What was the embrace like, and how was that fight week lead up?
Fight week, everything went smooth. UFC debuts are always stressful. Um, it's a different level of like nerves and emotion and anxiety that comes along with it. You feel like, from what I've noticed every time someone kind of makes their debut is they feel like all these years are culminating in this one night, which is not really the case, but that's you kind of put that pressure on yourself. It's like, I need to win. I need to win. And obviously you always want to win, but fight week was smooth. Like he was good. The weight cut was smooth. It seemed as the fight got closer, he got more relaxed in the environment and confident in the mission and all that stuff. And it was a really like atypical warm up for the fight. Like I said, as it got closer, he seemed to get more relaxed, which we were really, really happy about. And then in the fight, he showed some things that like I can really, as a coach, that I can really build on. Because Nick, the knock on Nick coming in is that he hadn't been tested locally, and that was it was tough because he had 6 first round finishes, and he had fought a couple good guys. We had to fight some turds because opponents pulled out and stuff like that. But I put a couple good tests in front of him, and he just walked through them. So it was like, unfortunately, he didn't get that adversity on the local scene like you'd want to see. You always want to stay undefeated, but you'd like to see people get pushed a little bit and kind of be uncomfortable, overcome some adversity in fights. And unfortunately, he didn't quite get that. And then when the call comes, he's only 6-0, but he's got 6 first round finishes. Doesn't have a lot of cage time as a pro. Hadn't dealt with a lot of adversity. So when he got in there, and then we were fighting a true veteran. That guy was 16-1 with 14 finishes, and he had fought some like really good guys. So there was a reason we were such a big underdog. But Nick went in there, and I think like 3 weeks notice, you take a fight. He got tired early. But like the fact that he got tired early, like he did, he realized things weren't going his way, and he like adjusted on the fly in the fight where we like made some calls, and instead of just being like, oh shoot, go backwards and like not do anything about it, like he tried to change the course of the fight. And you see in the second round, like he kind of put his heels in the snow, so to speak, dug in, came forward with some elbows, rocked the kid a little bit, came forward, got a takedown, got on top. Unfortunately, he didn't stay on top, and you know, little moments in the fight where like we could have taken the fight back, and it just didn't go our way for whatever reason. But I can build on that. You know, like the losses will come, but if it was like he got in there, got overwhelmed, didn't listen, didn't come back, and didn't try to like take the fight back and give himself a chance to win, that's tough because like a lot of times those fighters aren't going to change that. That's what they're going to do their whole career. They're kind of like when they don't feel comfortable, they're going to kind of buckle under the pressure. And I was very, very happy and pleased that like when the pressure came to Nick, he felt like he was getting overwhelmed. He didn't just buckle. He like thought to himself like, okay, I know I don't really want to go forward right now, but that's what I have to do, and that's the only way I can win this fight. And he like made the conscious decision to like go through the fire, so to speak, and give himself a chance to win the fight. As a coach, I can work with that all day. And like that's my takeaways from the fight is all right, you gassed out in the first round and still fought a guy who's a killer finisher and he couldn't put you away. And then after the fight, you know, we go and get stitches. 45 minutes after the fight, that kid's still laying on the ground, wheezing and then dry heaving into a bucket. Like we pushed that kid as far as he was able to go. Kudos to him. He fought really good. And he's a stud, you know? But like, given the fact that we had 3 weeks to prepare for him, don't feel like we fought the best, and we still were able to push a guy of that caliber to that level of exhaustion and even like have little chances to like take the fight over after dealing with early adversity is like I'm really proud of Nick. And I know he's not going to feel these words now because he's still like feeling the loss and he's upset, but like this loss will age well for Nick because he'll come back stronger from it. I think Rebecca will do well in his future fights, and I think that's a fight that if it was a full camp, like that is a fight that Nick can win. So I think he showed all of us. I think he showed a lot of people that he belongs in the UFC, and that now the next fight we'll go in there on a full camp and we'll get to show everybody what we're really made of.
And timeline wise, do we know when that'll be?
We're not in a rush. I mean, he got stitches in his forehead and stuff like that, and you know he took a lot of shots in that fight. So I'm always very conservative with like coming back from fights. So like he'll, you know, ideally, hopefully next week he'll start back with strength and conditioning and just start moving around a little bit, not do any contact for a little while because you know get cuts, you know, cut back open. But I assume within the next couple of weeks he'll start rolling light, coming to sessions and like helping out a little bit, but like not really any live training for at least a month, and then he'll ease back in. So realistically, if I had my way, like I think he fight in the summer. You know, like give us like 6 months to get back in the training room and like really fill some of those holes that were kind of exposed. And not say there's necessarily holes, but like get him more confident with certain things that like he didn't feel great about going to the debut, and like go into a full camp with more months to get better. Kid's only 25. He's getting better every day, you know? So come back in with the full camp, you know, with some rest, and then, you know, fill some holes in the bucket, so to speak, and then come back stronger in the summer. I think that would be a perfect timeline for him.
Yeah, that sounds great, man. I'm pumped for that. And for sure with the UFC, is that a stay with the that promotion?
Yeah. So like anytime the UFC signs a new person, you usually get a 4 fight deal. They can cut you whenever they want, but you know, generally, unless you go out and do something really bad or wrong in the first fight, they're going to give you a second shot, especially when you come in on 3 weeks' notice. And you know, I think Nick showed that he belonged there, and you know, for sure he'll get a second. You know, he'll get another shot, and then it'll be time for us to show what we can do in a full camp.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited for what's next for Nick. Another guy on the team, Big Tom Pags. I'm so excited to see the inevitable call up and him on a major stage. What's the excitement level for you and Tom's future?
You know, the upside with Tom is very high. He's wrestled his whole life. Stopped wrestling in college to focus on MMA, and you know, you look at him in fights, and he's a very good striker. He's long. He's got a really awkward build, not awkward looking, but awkward to deal with. You know, he's very long and rangy, almost like a scarecrow, but he's like physically very strong as well. Um, the kid, it, like he does not train like a local fighter. He trains exactly like a UFC fighter trains, like Robin Calvin. Like that's how he trains. Like he's already putting in the work, putting in the dedication, has the commitment level and the discipline to like be a UFC fighter. Now it's just a matter of getting the experience, like getting those fights on the local scene that are going to give us the adversity. He does have one loss, which I think has aged well. That guy's done well since I think he's 6-1, and we lost by split decision. We took the fight on 2 days' notice, a week after having a fight, and he broke his foot in the first kick. First kick of the fight, he breaks his foot. Goes 3 rounds with the kid, and like I said, he took the fight. He fought on Saturday, and then fought that kid the next Sunday, so a week and a day. And he took the fight on 2 days' notice because we weren't injured and we liked the matchup. And Nate's a tough kid, but that was a really good test for Tom. Like it was good to deal with like the short notice fight, the adversity that he dealt with in that fight, dealing with an injury and still fighting. And since that he's reeled off like 2 first round finishes, and we're looking to get back in there in March and get a third win. So yeah, the upside's really really high with him. He asks the right questions. He's so dedicated to what he's doing, like to the point where sometimes I'm like, Tom, we need more balance. Like we need to like go eat a milkshake, like go have some fun in your life. And I think he's working on that. He's gotten better with it, taking some vacations and stuff. So I think the upside with him is great, and it's super rewarding to see a kid that came in like bright eyed, bushy tailed, and we've been with him since his last 2 amateur fights, and the kid's just the potential there is really great. So I'm excited for him to like kind of finish off that local career, next few fights, and then not rush him to the UFC. Like we really want to make sure he's like tested and ready, and then when we tell the UFC we're ready, like he's gonna be ready.
Mm, I bet, and I'm sure that time is coming. You said no rush, but it's coming up soon. He looks phenomenal. But for
Yeah,
you to see these guys come in as young, hungry students, and then to see them kind of graduate and elevate, get better and better, and now competing on professional scales and some in the UFC. What's that like for you as a coach to see that full journey?
it's extremely like rewarding, like because their family will reach out to you and say thank you. Like their loved ones are like, oh my god, thank you so much for what you do. But like really, it's like those little moments where like it's just you two, maybe after a weight cut, you're about to weigh in, or you're in a big moment, and they just look at you and they're like, hey man, I really appreciate everything. And like that's the rewarding part, is that you see that like you had an impact on someone's life in a positive way. Like, these guys, win fights, go to UFC, win fights. They're buying cars, they're buying houses, they're getting married, they're having kids. Like, all that stuff is like you feel like you have a part in that, and like you're not just molding athletes, but you're trying to mold like good young men. You're trying to mold good people, and that's like the really rewarding part from my end. Isn't just like the coaching, because we have a lot of coaches that give them technical skills and all that. I'm not the only guy. We have a room full of coaches, and but I think like trying to build good people too. You can look at our team and no one's gonna say like, oh, these guys are losers, or they're bad people, or they're bad apples, or anything like that. Like I think these guys are all role models, and they're walking the walk, talking the talk, and they're doing it with class. And like that's someone that like my kids can look up to as like how to do things. And just being a part of that is like more important to me than the wins and the losses, because you know the wins and the losses will go away, but how you made people feel will stick with people forever. And I think we're building a team of high character individuals, and I think that's going to have more of a ripple effect, or resonate more with people as they progress through their lives and their careers.
Is Why is it so important for you to keep the cartel a close knit, small team, and the circle tight?
Well, I just saw like some of these teams, the big knock on the big camps. Like there's benefits and downfalls to big camps and small camps. And what I was noticing is all the time, it was like the fighters were always training around the gym schedule. It was like, all right, well, I can't do that because team practice is at this time, or, um, things like that. And it was always like, why shouldn't it be the other way around? Like why, like look at boxers. They're not, the coach doesn't necessarily always dictate everything that happens. It's like, let's look at the fighter's natural tendencies. Like if your fighter's not a morning person, and he has a hard time going to sleep at night, and he likes to sleep in and kind of stay up late. Like, why would you have all early morning practices? Because now that fighter's going through camp, half the nights he's like so stressed out about that he has to wake up early. He's gonna have a crappy session, more likely to get hurt. His weight's not gonna come off as fast. He's gonna kind of be miserable. He's gonna be cranky. So like, if you have a guy that's a night owl, why don't you just have all afternoon practices so he can like let his like natural rhythm take place, get all the sleep he needs, never have to set an alarm clock, and know that he's getting all the sessions in. So like, it was kind of like the mentality of the boxers, like, let's build the camp around the fighter, not build the fighter around a camp. And I also felt like the amount of attention that you can give is finite. I only have so many hours in the day to keep, and I only have two eyes. So if there's 30 people in the room, who am I really looking at? And so if you only have 4 or 5 guys in the room, it's like the nuances and the amount of detail that I can get into, and knowing their tendencies and their personalities and stuff like that. I think it's a lot more intimate. I think it's a lot more. I just think there's more success with that. Like, so when I yell something in a fight, it's not like the first time you're hearing it. Like, we've been in all these situations and these scenarios together in the gym, and I've had my eyes on you, and I'm watching you develop. And it's tough because you look at some of these big camps and their coaches become professional corners. They're no longer really coaches. Like, and it's not a knock on a big gym. Like, they're doing their thing, and it works for some of them. But like, I just can't in good conscience travel 4 or 5 days a week, be home 2 or 3 days a week, and say that I took that guy through a camp and deserved a corner him on fight week. So if I got 20 UFC fighters on the roster, each fighting 3 times a year, that's 60 UFC fights. Potentially you're gone 40 of the weeks. And it's like, all right, if fight week's the most important week of their life, and you're only going to show up on what, Thursday night, come home Sunday, you're not even there for the whole fight week. But then when you're there on Thursday night, your whole rest of your team's back home training. Who's training them? Like, that's their real coaches, the guys that are training them all the time. And then you become kind of like the head coach and the professional corner. So I just feel like I wanted to be like the coach. I wanted to be someone that was in the camps. Like, I'm with you the whole way. And like, that's why when these guys fight, we travel together. Like, even, Nick, before he was in the UFC, he was coming to all the UFC fights with us. We bring these guys out, we put them up with us, and we train while we're out there. So it's kind of like we're a circus. You can just pack up and go. And that was like kind of the philosophy behind that. Is I felt like the attention to detail, and the detail that a fighter that's going to go all in like a Tom Pags, that's going to put in that effort, like, he deserves a coach that's going to do the same thing, not a coach that's going to do the same thing when he's around. He needs a coach that's going to be around all the time and put in that level of detail.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. It's always quality over quantity, right? That's what it sounds like.
Yeah, and it's not to say that the big camps don't have quality either, but like, if you have quality for 3 days a week or quality for 7 days a week, what's better? So that's the way I
Seven
look at it.
days,
Is
yeah.
yeah. So like, and I fought, like, a lot of these coaches didn't fight either. Like, I fought, 15 fights. I was never in the UFC or anything, but I know the things that I didn't get when I was a fighter, and the things I wish I would have had. I want to give that to these guys. Like, I want to give them, like, I want to make them a priority. I want them to know that they're not in it alone. I want to feel the lows, feel the highs. Like, I want to, like, when we lose, I want to, like, here, come talk to me. When we win, I want to be like, go talk to him. I want them to be there for the great moments and soak it up, but I want to kind of deflect them from the negative moments and like try to absorb some of that. Like, and I didn't always have that when I was a fighter. It was kind of like you lost and you felt like so alone, except for a few of your teammates that really kind of felt the loss with you. But it's like some of the coaches, it was like, okay, on to the next one. And I didn't want to feel that. Like, I don't want to be the coach that made other people feel like that. So and I don't think if I was coaching 30 fighters that I could have that level of care that I think that fighters deserve.
Well, you definitely wouldn't have the time for everybody if you had 30 guys on the roster.
Yeah.
Uh, well, team captains Rob Font, fighting Yanez in a few weeks. Adrian Yanez. What's the camp looking like? How excited are we for that matchup?
And I'm excited anytime Rob Font fights. I mean, he's always in bangers. He's in great fights. People are going to look at Stapology and say, oh, he's lost 2 in a row. He's 35. Like, but the reality is he fought freaking Jose Aldo and
Killers.
Cheeto Vera, who's on he's fought 2 killers. Like, that's what's going to happen. And it's like he got I would say in both of those fights, they were sort of similar where it's like Rob won a lot of the fight, but they won the bigger moments, especially the Cheeto fight, you know? Um, so it's like, I don't leave those fights thinking that Rob's not able to win those fights, you know, because he just beat a former champion in Garbrandt, you know? So it's not like Rob can't beat those guys. It's just that we didn't beat those guys. And it just wasn't our night, unfortunately, twice in a row. And I think you can kind of start to get like down on yourself as a team, as a coach, as a fighter, if you let those demons creep in. But the reality is like we are fighting some of the best fighters that have ever walked on this planet, and we're just losing like the the big moments of the fights. So we got to figure out how to make that adjustment so we don't just win a lot of the exchanges, we also win the big moments. And um, I'm excited to see him come back. He took the necessary rest after those two fights. You know, he got, you know, there's a lot of shots landed in those fights, some big shots, and you know he didn't get put away or anything like that, but he did get, you know, he took some heavy shots. So we're just being conservative, and you know we had him rest for a while, but like it's excited having him back in camp and getting ready for, you know, one of these young guys to come up. It's kind of the ebb and flow of how it goes. It's like you come in, you're the young guy, you got to beat some other young guys. That gives you the right to fight one of the veterans that's in the top 10, you know, top 15. You beat one of those guys, and then eventually you get to take a stab at a top 5 against the guy that's been there for a while and make him keep his spot, or you get to take it from him. And that's where we were in the Maurice camp. You know, we went in, we fought Maurice, who's number 3, we took his number, you know, and that happens. And then, you know, you go in there and you win some fights, and you know you're the man, and then you lose a couple fights, and then now the UFC is like, all right, the next guy deserves a chance too, and you become the guy that's gonna fight the young lion again and show that you're still the king, you know. And that's where we're at in this time. It's like, you know, we go from being a favorite against Jose Aldo, which is insane. You know, we were a betting favorite against Jose Aldo and Cheeto, and I'm pretty sure we were a favorite against Cheeto as well. We go from being a betting favorite against those guys, so now we get to fight backwards, and that comes with a different level of pressure and you know downfalls. But like the reality is like once those cage doors lock, it's 2 dudes in there and they're gonna have a fist fight, and the better fighters, you know, should win. And I think we're our team's like really excited about the matchup. Yanez 5-0 in the UFC. He hasn't fought like the quality of opponents that Rob has. Like I think out of the 5 fights that he's fought, there's only one guy that's even still left in the UFC, and that was the guy he lost to by split decision, or he beat by split decision. All the other guys he beat like were kind of like 2 or 3 or 4 and out, and hasn't had winning records in the UFC. So his level of competition has not been there, but he's doing what he should do. If you want to be a top 10 guy, he's doing what he should do to those guys, just like Rob did on his way up. So it's exciting, you know, like good boxing. It seems to have good cardio, good pressure. It's an exciting fight. I think people are looking at the boxing in this fight and seeing like, wow, this is going to be like a fun fight. Like, I think, you know, we'll have a size advantage. I do think we'll have a power advantage. Um, I'm I'm pretty confident that if Rob, you know, Rob never won, he does not a grappling heavy style, but if Rob chose to grapple, I feel like, put it this way, if Rob went against Adrian in a grappling tournament, I'm confident Rob would win. Um, so yeah, I think it's exciting. It's got good storylines. The young kid versus the guy that was on top, and you know he's trying to steal our number, and we have to take offense to that and show him that he's not ready for this number 6 yet. So
Yeah, I mean the stylistic matchup, I think it doesn't get funner than this for Rob Font, a guy who's going to stand in front of him, bring it forward, and has a bunch of steam. Like you said, 5-0. Are there a bunch of holes that you guys see? And you don't have to give up any game
yeah,
plan or anything, but anything that you're noticing from just watching those 5 fights in the UFC?
no, there's always things you notice, right? And then you look for just like little holes in the foundation, like little areas where there's like a glimpse of weakness, and every fighter has, you know, none of my fighters are perfect. You know, we get hit sometimes. Like you're not perfect. You know, every fighter gets hit. Every fighter has like tendencies, and you know, both positive and negative. And you know, we see some things that Adrian does that I think align well, like his deficiencies align well with Rob's strengths. So I think that makes it like a fun fight for us where we can kind of get in our groove, do the things that we like to do, and it's kind of the things that give him trouble anyway. So yeah, there's always things that, you know, we kind of keep them tied to our chest up until until they come out on fight night. But there's definitely some things I think that Rob will bring to the table that should give Adrian some issues.
Oh man, I'm pumped to see that. That's in April, is it? April, March? Do we
April 8th. Yeah, we're
eighth?
10 weeks tomorrow. Yeah, we'll cut weight 10 weeks from tomorrow.
Oh, diving in. Is that Apex or is that somewhere in the States?
We we have no idea. Like they haven't. It's UFC 287, so
Oh,
they
it's a
haven't figured out
pay-per-view.
which city it is. All we're told is it's an East Coast city, and that the leading candidates are Brooklyn and Miami. So we'll see what happens.
What about Boston?
I know they should come to Boston. You know, freaking give us that home game again. Like, but what can
It's,
you do?
it's been a while since we got a show right here in the hometown.
Yeah, we definitely deserve a show here.
Yeah. Are
We're over.
those
We're overdue for it.
yeah, are those conversations that you've ever had with some of the UFC higher ups?
We don't really get much access to the UFC higher ups. Like, we talk to the matchmakers and then obviously then other UFC employees. But as far as like come to Boston, like not really. Like, you might see Dana at a show and the fighter might go up and shake his hand and say, "Hey, when you come to Boston," type thing. But you don't get a lot of access to them until you get that certain level um, where you get invited to his office and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, hopefully, I mean they should come to Boston, right? Like
Yeah.
we have a good crop of guys out here now, and I think it'd be exciting because you see they go to Texas and they fill it with Texas guys, and that's awesome. The energy in those buildings is great. Do that in Boston. We get a bunch of guys in New England that would fill up that place. We could be the whole freaking red corner and blow the top off the TD Garden.
Dude, that sounds unreal. That sounds like a magnificent night. I hope that happens in the near future. But the other captain on your roster that we got to talk about for a little bit, Mr. Calvin Kattar, who I've noticed on Instagram stories doing some strives, some nice workout videos, looking good. How has he been since the injury?
They were about almost 6 weeks post-op from ACL reconstruction. And the report from the UFC today was he's like way ahead of schedule on his recovery. Everything's looking great, knock on wood. Um, like couldn't go any smoother. So he's doing PT 2 days, 2 times a day, 5 days a week out at the PI. We had him do his first 6 weeks of rehab out there. He'll be coming home next week, and then we'll be going to Joe Van Allen, who has been a long time Patriots physical therapist out in Wellesley. So we'll be going to him 5 days a week, and then go right back to his strength and conditioning coach, TD Athlete's Edge, 2 days a week, starting next week. And then I think probably in May, Calvin will go back out for another month to the PI to do another month of physical therapy out there because their team is just awesome. Heather Linden, her whole team out there, like it just gives you the confidence. Like, those are scary injuries and surgeries to come back from, and when they're like, "Listen, like do this, you're fine," then you do it because you're fine. But it's like when you come back to like a local PT that maybe doesn't deal with high level athletes like that, you don't really know what to trust. Rehabs can be off. And I've heard horror stories about people in their rehabs and just like throwing off the whole trajectory of the comeback. But yeah, he's in great hands with the UFC. We're very fortunate that the UFC like has the PI and those resources available to the athletes for free. So as far as like coming back from a major injury like that, nothing could be better. But it just sucks that we were ever in the situation to get hurt. Like I'm still bitter about the Josh Emmett fight and Chris Lee's scorecard because oh man, especially as the Perth card's coming and it's Emmett versus Jair. If that fourth round scorecard by Chris Lee went to us, we win the fight and we're fighting for a title right now. It's just, and we don't have an ACL injury. So it's just, obviously everything happens for a reason, but it is like frustrating to know how close you were to a title fight. And that just one little check of a box by one judge that doesn't make sense to a lot of people can affect the trajectory of one's career. Because, that forced us to take the Allen fight. We hurt our knee, and now here we are.
And not only but a risk on a career, but how much of a financial risk did that take on Calvin, getting half the purse, not being able to, do the things he wants to do and get his full bag?
Yeah, I mean, you're already looking at well over $500,000 that didn't happen because of all this. Like it's a lot of money. And then with the potential of way more upside, has he, got the interim title fight and won it. because now you're looking at a lot more money as a champion. So, yeah, I mean, the financial implications of that Emmett decision, and it's, one some could say catastrophic, but it's more like heartbreaking and frustrating.
Mm. Does that motivate him or you even more to get back in that sort of spot and take full advantage next time? Maybe not leave it up to the judges.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to like that old line like, "Oh, never leave it to the judges," but it's like if you look at the top 15, take out the Thug Nasty fight versus Ilya, but before that, I think in the last like 3 years, there had only been one finish between two top 10 fighters in the 45-pound division, and that was when Volkanovski finished Zombie.
Mm.
So like the reality is, when you get to a top 10 position in the featherweight division, no one's finishing each other, and it's because like I would say it's the top two division in the UFC. It's 35 and 45 are the top two, in my opinion, right? Um, in terms of depth and quality of opponents, and like really anybody can beat anybody. So like when you look at like that being one of the best divisions in the UFC, nobody's finishing each other in the top 10. These guys are all going 5-round wars. And so to say like, oh, Calvin should have just finished Josh, it's like, yeah, okay, well, we did close his eye and bust up his nose, and like he looked way worse than we did after the fight, which doesn't necessarily mean you won, but like there's not, could we have done more? Always, right? But it was halfway through the fight, and we're like, hey, listen, we got to take these last 2 rounds. And then he goes out and dominates the last 2 rounds, and one judge doesn't give us the fourth. So it was like a weird scorecard too. Like we actually won a majority of the rounds, like by the majority of the judges, because we won in the second round. Two judges had us winning. In the fourth round, two judges had us winning. In the fifth round, three judges had us winning. But if you add up all the scorecards, we lost 8-7 total. So it's like a really weird thing. It's like when you look at it as a majority of each round, we won. But that's not how they add up scorecards. So like we didn't win. It's very weird.
Yeah, the judging structure, the whole MMA judging for so long has been under scrutiny and just so much negative talk. Is there anything in your eyes you think would have immediate fixes for the positive for MMA judging and scoring?
I mean, just using the rule of numbers, like the rule of large, what is it? The rule of large numbers or whatever that is. Like, if I have 5 judges for these main events or title fights, you know, I don't see why you can't do it for the whole card. But in wrestling, if you're fighting for a state championship, they bring in a second referee to just make sure that every call is right and to get a second eye on all the important stuff. Like, and in wrestling, that the referee really is the judge, because he's the one that's giving the points out. So, wrestling does it where it's like big matches get more refs. Why do the big fights not have more judges? Like, if you just do 5, the chances of something getting messed up are like, you would think less, right? And then, I know for a fact, there's sometimes my vantage point, there's blind spots in the cage. I probably have the second best seat to the judges, right? And I can tell you right now, like, I didn't see Cheeto drop Rob with that left hook because it was a blind spot. I thought Rob shot. I didn't see Calvin throw a flying knee against Arnold Allen. It was the same exact spot in the cage. It was a blind spot. I didn't see him throw that flying knee. All of a sudden, I just saw him on the ground. I was like, what happened? Because it was a blind spot. It's like, what if the judge has a blind spot? With the refs in the way, all of a sudden, someone gets dropped with a hook, but the judge think he shot. So it's like you're reducing the amount of like error that could happen for things like that. Or like one judge looks down to take a note, doesn't see what happened, but maybe the other 4 did. So like it's tough, especially when right now, like the way they add up scorecards, one judge making one mistake in one round can cost you a whole fight because they add up the whole scores. Like I said, like Chris Lee's 4th-round scorecard, maybe he didn't see us land that spinning elbow that rocked him, and he looked down and he looked up and he just sees Josh standing there. So like he thinks Josh won the round, but the other 2 judges saw that it landed. But because he's one of 3, it weighs in that much more. And then I think the other thing they could do is don't let the judges' total score. You shouldn't add up the judges' total scorecard. I think the majority of each round should win. So if 2 judges have you winning the first round and the other one doesn't, you won that round. You're up 1-0. If 2
Regardless if it's
judges,
like a 10-8 round or a 10-9
well,
round.
yeah. So if it's the majority rule, so like let's say you go and dominate a first round, two judges have it 10-8, one judge has it 10-9. You won that round 10-8. There's no
Mhm.
like averaging, like the minority judge is like peace, you know? So whatever the majority decides is what that round is. And then like, you know, if there's like, because then I think what it does is it takes the element of error from one judge to have make one mistake and have it weigh in heavily. It takes all that out. So if you make one mistake in one round, your opinion doesn't matter anyway. You know, if the other two judges clearly see it for Calvin in round 4, but Chris Lee saw it the other way, it's like, well, Chris Lee's opinion didn't matter that round because the majority saw Calvin winning. So Calvin won the 4th round. Calvin won the 5th round. Josh won the 1st round. Josh won no other rounds because we won the 2nd. So like, I don't know. And it's not perfect, but if you have 5 judges and then allow the majority to go, I think it doesn't give, because judges are going to have off nights too. They're people, right? Like, so now you're taking like an egregious scorecard, meaning like they had a bad view, they looked down, they didn't follow the rules, they didn't think something was effective when it was, whatever it ends up being. Um, it's like any egregious scorecards, for whatever reason they may be, are thrown out the window. So the majority rules every round. It's a democracy. Um, so I don't know.
I love it. I love it. And also another one is why not just have like a monitor in front of them where there is no blind spots. They don't miss out on anything because everything is happening not only in front of them live, but also on the TV or the little monitor they'll have right in front of them.
Yeah, no, I think that actually is a thing that they have. I think judges
Okay.
do have monitors in front of them. Um, that's what I've been told. Like I don't sit there and watch the judges, but I have been told that the judges do have monitors sometimes. So I don't know. I had MMA Junkie just texted me and said they just did an interview with Adrian Yanez, and he said he wants to grab Fuku Burger with Rob after the fight. So shout out to Fuku Burger. They always treat Rob good. Anytime he goes out to Vegas, they'll let him go. He's flipped the burgers for them, and
Ooh.
yeah, I think it just shows like there's no animosity between Rob and Adrian on this fight. Like Adrian's a young kid coming up. He's trying to get to that top 5. Like someone was gracious enough to give us that opportunity when we were outside the top 10, and you got to pay it forward. Like it's not like we're trying to do anybody favors, but at the end of the day, like our job is to fight. You know, like Rob's job is to go in there and beat whoever they put in front of him, and we got to figure out how to beat this kid who's I think 16-3 or whatever it is, and 5-0 in the UFC. Like it's our job to go out and figure out how to beat him, regardless of what his ranking is, and then move on to whatever's next. So yeah, I'm excited about this one. Just hopefully they invite me to Fuku Burger
Yeah, flip
though.
some burgers back there. Are they good at all? Have you been there?
No, I've been there. It's they have a few locations. I think one's on Durango in Vegas and one's like another place. I've been to both of them, and it's good, man. They have like a, I don't want to mess this up, but it's almost like an Asian flair to a burger, and like they have this like I think like this fuku sauce. I'm hacking this, but it's like the special sauce that comes with the burger that you can dip your fries in, and I'm a guy that like whenever I eat, I leave a lot of my food left. Like I waste a lot of food. I think you wouldn't believe it because I'm like chubby, but like I do waste a lot of food. Um, the 2 times I've been there to eat, I've eaten every single thing on my plate.
Wow.
So, as if that's any sort of testament, it passed the Tyson Chartier waste test. I didn't waste any of it.
It fully made its way down. Uh, but just to get back into the fight talk a little bit, I once heard you on a podcast talk about you prepare like a 4 to 5 page presentation for every fight preparation and camp of the opponent and things you may see. What is the process of that like for you?
It's just a lot of film study. You know, I go through film study. I look for things like I'll go through and watch all the fights, the oldest fights to the newest fights, and then you start to look for tendencies of things that like, all right, they did this in their third profile, whatever's available. You know, maybe they have 20 UFC fights, and you're looking at the first UFC fight and the 20th UFC fight. They still have some of those same bad habits. And then you can start to predict like what their bad habits are going to be in their fight. You can usually predict like what they're going to do in certain positions, and then you know what they're good at, what they're bad at, like how they get hurt, how they hurt people. Like you're seeing all those things, and then you start to see patterns, and you recognize those patterns. And then the idea is like we back into building the camp around a lot of that stuff. So like we'll drill certain positions in camp, like um, knowing that the fighter's going to do X, Y, or Z, and then we'll talk about in this position he's likely going to do this. This is how we're going to stop it. Like I'll give an example, like Sergio Pettis when we fought him. It's like he was so good at getting out of back control. Like if you took Sergio Pettis's back, he was either going to end up on top or get out. Like it was almost like so he kind of fought a style where he like kind of wanted to take you to take his back so then he could get away. So like we were just going to stay in referee's position and beat him up from there and never take his back. You know, where it's like the temptation is you want to take his back, but you see like that's what he wants you to do, and that's not like fucking, you know, I'm not some mad scientist when you come up with that. You know, it's not like some like, oh my God, what a genius. Like it's nothing like that, but it's just keeping your fighters in positions where they're going to have the best chance to stay in a dominant position. And like against Sergio Pettis, it was like, no, resist the urge to take his back. He's going to give it to you. Don't let him do it. Like just stay in referee's position, beat him up, keep wrestling him. And then that's what we did. You know, we got in that position, and like once we got to referee's position, Sergio was like almost begging us to take his back, but he couldn't get up if we didn't, you know? And just examples like that. So you're just like always looking for like every position. Where does this guy like to be? Where does he not like to be? What kind of escapes does he use? How are we going to counter those? So like ideally in a fight, like I know what the guy's going to do before he does it, and I can start coaching the defense or the offense or the counter. And then, you know, we've already done it a bunch of times at camp. So really the whole game plan of the scouting report, it just really comes in for like me and the other coaches to prepare the fighter for everything that should or could happen on fight night. And then we can make a best guess of what they're going to do in all these positions when the fight happens.
So basically like feed into your own fighter's strengths and oppose the opponent's strengths.
Yeah, because sometimes there's like your best strength might not line up with like maybe they're really good at defending X, Y, or Z. You probably shouldn't do that, even though you're good at that. So like resisting the urge to put yourself in their strengths, even though you feel like it's your strength. So like, yeah, it's tough. It's a lot of people think it's just like I'll just go out there and fight, and sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes on the fly you adjust and you kind of throw everything out the window. But I feel like more so is like to prepare these guys to fight some of the best guys in the world. Like you got to know what to prepare them for. You're not just going out, you can't just say, oh, you're going out with Jose Aldo, just fight him, like how's that going to turn out? Like this guy's got some of the best weapons that ever go in the cage, So like you got to have an idea of like tendencies, where to play, where not to play, what they're going to do in certain positions, and then hope you can just prepare your fighter throughout the camp to like deal with all those things.
Yeah. Well, I would love to see the scouting report on Jose Aldo.
Oh man, we lost that one, so it sucks.
Yeah. How long does it take you to prepare these presentations?
It really just depends. Like some fighters, like I remember we were getting ready for a Sunsow. I think he had like 45 UFC rounds that I had to break down. That's 5 minutes apiece. So 45 times five, how many minutes is that? Like 250 minutes?
It's a lot of minutes.
Something like that. That's like, what is that? 3 hours? So 6, 12, 18, 24. So like 4 hours just to watch his fights once. You had to watch for 4 hours. That's not counting the minutes in between rounds, the buffering, all that stuff. Like, so you're looking at 4 hours of like live video just on that kid, and you have to go through and watch it and break it down. And I make little videos of like if they have a certain takedown they like to do, I'll like try to put a little clip together and put like a video, send to the fighter or the other coaches. Like, this is his last 10 takedowns of the takedown that he likes. This is how he sets it up. This is what he does. And then so that way it can kind of be fresh. You can start to look for like his tendencies before he does it and all that. So it's yeah, it can be a lot of work. Like I think some of them get to be like, you're spending like a work week on this, like 40 hours just to really break down all the film and then come up with like how you want to react to certain things, and then implementing that throughout the camp of like, all right, this is what this guy shoots. How often do we need to like show that in the room and defend it, and how we're going to defend it, and then now make it so it's like a trigger to come out in the fight. Yeah, it takes a lot of time.
Yeah, sounds like it. And also, is it true you gave up your notes of Ige to Eric Nixon whenever you guys fought them?
Yeah, like I took out all the call signs and stuff like that, but like I gave him basically my scouting report and I took out the strategy portion of it, I believe. But like I sent him like my notes on Ige, the scouting report, like what I saw as Ige's strengths, his weaknesses, where he was good, where he was bad, um, like areas where I saw he was deficient, tendencies that he had. So then, ideally, because after we beat Ige, we want Ige to keep winning, and like so it's like if I can help Eric level up Ige, then like he keeps winning, that win, that win ages better for us and it makes us look better holding our rank. And I just believe like Eric's a good dude, Ige's a great dude. They've always treated with nothing but respect. And like I just believe in karma. It's like, all right, I'm gonna help out two good people. It's gonna come back to me. I don't do it because of that, but I know it's like, all right, I'm gonna get it, something good out there, something good will come back. And Eric's always been a resource of mine too. Like there's very few people who do what we do, even though me and Eric choose to do it in different ways. He's at a bigger camp, I'm at a smaller camp. We both respect each other tremendously. And I think we don't have that many colleagues, and of all the colleagues that we do have, some of them are, can be a little bit of a douchebag, and some of them can like not like you, or they're just aligned with a certain camp that doesn't like our camp or whatever, So like there's only so many people in this sport that you can look at as a colleague that will like try to help you too. And Eric's one of those guys. So I had no problem doing that. It wasn't like I was giving any secrets away about Calvin or anything like that. And I think it's, I felt that it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, kudos to you. That is, to me, that's so gangster. It's like to give the opponent the what you see and the things that you're looking at in the fight before coming into it. That's hats off. That's so G. But as a coach, what makes you most happy?
Right. So I gave him the notes after the fight, not before the fight. It was after
Oh,
the.
okay,
Yeah,
okay,
no,
okay.
I didn't. I'm not that stupid. Yeah,
That's what I
no,
was
it
thinking.
was
I was like,
after. Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah,
What
no,
do
no,
you,
that was after the fight that he reached out and he's like, hey, like I'd love to see what your thoughts on Ige were, and I was like, oh, let me send you what I got. So it was after the fight. So I think, and that he can use like it's a fresh perspective. So like me seeing like and this has nothing to do with Ige, but if I'm like, oh, this kid can't defend a single leg, and then he's like, oh shit, like yeah, I guess he's right. And because it's hard to sometimes when you're with an athlete so much, it's hard to see the forest through the trees. So you can get blind spots to what they're good and bad at, and you kind of just take it for granted. But like someone else with a fresh perspective can like look in on your athlete and be like, hey man, like he doesn't really deal well with pressure, or he doesn't deal well with this, and you're like, oh yeah, you're right, we should work on that. So yeah, I just felt like it was the right thing to do.
definitely. That's a definitely a mensch move by you. Uh, but the question I had as a coach, what makes you most happy?
I mean, I'd love to say wins, right? Like wins do make me happy, like, but not. It's more when we win, it's more of a relief than it is happy. It's just a relief that we didn't lose. But like honestly, like what makes me most happy is like the off the mat stuff, like seeing these kids like go from like not having any money in their bank account and like even me being a piece of the pie that they trust, right? And having like some say in their careers, and then seeing them level up to, now they have a car, now they have a little cushion in the bank, or now they have a house, now they're getting married, now they're having kids, and like seeing them like be good people, like role models to young kids, um, seeing them like show a good work ethic and like I said, be a role model to others and be a fighter that like other young fighters can look up to as like, all right, I want to be like that guy because he's a class act, he fights good, he puts in the work. So like I think that's the stuff that I find most rewarding, just because knowing that like all this other crap that we do in the gym and all these decisions that we make, they've led to that. They've led to this guy has a life now. This guy has a comfortable home. He's got a little cushion in the bank, and he's going to be a good role model for his kids, or if they have kids down the road, and he's providing for his girl, and he's making his family proud. I think just being part of that like is the most rewarding thing. Is that I feel like we're trying to make good humans.
Yeah, man, that's beautifully said. That is definitely something super important and we need in this world. Uh, I really appreciate the time. Thank you so much for joining me. I want to just finish off with this one last thing. You've been a part of so many memorable fights and crazy UFC events. What are the one or two that stand out absolutely most to you?
I think it's hard to top the UFC 220 where Rob and Calvin and Kyle all won in Boston. Like I don't coach Kyle, but I managed them. So to see those three go through camp together and then be in the same locker room and go win, win, win. It was beautiful at the Garden in front of our hometown. It was just unbelievable. And then I think the second one, which not really involved me, but like we were on the bus when Connor threw the dolly at Khabib. It's like me and Calvin were in that seat that Michael Chiesa was in that the dolly
Oh,
hit.
shit. Yeah.
And then they were like, the UFC's like, oh no, you need to go to the other shuttle. So we went to the other shuttle, and then Michael Chiesa sat down in our seat, and then that's when all hell broke loose. And like, so I even got a video on my phone of like seeing all the Irish guys running around the bus backing up, and I didn't get the dolly shot, but it was like right after that I saw them run back around. And I had my phone out. I got like a 1 minute video. I don't know, maybe I'll post it someday, but it was like being part of that whole thing. It was like kind of a big part of MMA history. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a crazy moment. So Michael Chiesa, he got cut right in the head by the glass. He was in the seat that Calvin Kattar was supposed to be in.
Yep, the front first row, like you walk up the bus on the right side, very first row against the window. That's where Calvin was, and I was sitting right next to him. And it wasn't more than 30 seconds after we got out of that seat that the whole thing happened.
That's the timing on that's unbelievable, huh?
Yeah, so you never wish to be in a seat so bad.
Or out of a seat, right?
No, I mean that was like I think Michael Chiesa ended up winning a lawsuit or is it still in court or who knows, but I'm pretty sure he was probably made money off that. So I should have been in that seat. I could have gotten
a little extra payday. Coach, I really appreciate the time. I'm a huge fan of everything you guys got going on. I'm rooting for you guys until the wheels fall off. I'm excited for all your guys having a big year this year, and I hope to have you on again one day soon.
Appreciate it, brother.